Ooh. What's up, everyone? I'm back with another episode of Martial Arts Movie Mondays. I would say from quarantine, but the show's kind of the same place every single time, so I don't really know if it really changes. But if you've never been watched the show before, first of all, shame on you because this is like episode 35 or something, so you got plenty to watch. But what I do is I take a deep dive into my collection back here, my Headless Snow Trooper, my Freddy Krueger, but the collection streams all the way around the room of various martial arts flicks. And we talk about the movie, we review it, new and old, but also talk about how it might have had an influence on personal martial arts journey. Some do, some don't. But I like to try to get into the ones that might have had some kind of impact on me. So it gives a little bit more meat to the discussion. So today we're diving into a martial artist that I don't think I've talked about on this show yet, but it also includes one of my favorites that I've talked about numerous times on this show. If you've never watched the show before, you already know. I mean, if you have watched the show before, sorry, you already know I'm a huge Jean-Claude Van Damme fan. I do recognize a lot of his later works weren't necessarily as good, but he's gotten some really good ones as of late. But the one we're going to talk about today is a movie that features Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he is not the star of the movie. And no, it is not one of the Kickboxer movies. It's a little bit different one. Before he did Kickboxer remake, where he took on the master role, this was another one where he kind of did the same thing in a slightly different way. What I'm talking about is a 2012 movie, Dragon Eyes, stars Van Damme in a co-star type role, but this is really a Cung Lee movie. And we haven't talked about Cung Lee on this show yet, but don't you worry, we will be talking about more of him. If you don't know Cung Lee, where have you been? But he was I believe he was a Strike Force champion first before he shifted into MMA, won tons of titles, made the transition into acting like a lot of the fighters do. Pandorum was a big release he did, Man with the Iron Fists he did. I believe the Grand Master he was in. Of course, Dragon Eyes. He's done a few other ones. I believe he showed up on Into the Badlands. So he's one of those guys that has kind of been around. He's still rather new, even though he's been around for years and he's done a lot of stuff. He's still not. I guess I don't want to say he's not widely known because I think in martial arts circles he is. But in the mainstream, he hasn't reached that big status that he probably deserves. He's coming to his own as an actor. He's a good actor, but he brings the fights, man. He's like an old school fighter. So any movie he shows up in, majority of the time it's old school fights, and they're good fights. They're brutal. They're violent. They're great. They really remind me of the old Van Damme movies and Chuck Norris movies and movies like that they were like real fights. Not a lot of wire work. He's done some wire work movies, but his fights are usually really hardcore. And this one is no different. Dragon Eyes essentially follows this guy who comes into this town. You find out right at the beginning that he had been in prison, which is where he met Van Damme, who became kind of his mentor, instructor, and started training him in prison to survive. And so he comes out. He ends up kind of getting in between these two gangs. There's like a Hispanic gang and a black gang. And then, of course, there's this drug kingpin thing in the middle. And violence ensues, as you might imagine. The movie, the tone of the movie very much reminds me of a movie we talked about on this show already, Angel Town, with star Oliver Grunner. I don't know how you actually say his name. I've been a fan of his too for a long time. But anyway, it reminded me of that movie because of the whole gang aspect infused with the martial arts aspect. What I like about this movie is they didn't just make everybody in the movie a martial arts expert, because a lot of times, even though I love it because we get a lot more martial arts action that way, there's a lot of the movies that they feel the need to make somebody, if not everybody they fight, also a martial artist or a ninja or a karate person or whatever. In this one, I like that he kind of stands out on his own, because outside of Van Damme, who's there kind of to mentor, teach him, Cung Lee is the one that doesn't mean other people can't fight. They're just more brawlers or boxers or that kind of thing. And he is the martial arts guy in the movie. But right out of the gate, you get a little small fight to set the tone. But then once we get through the credits, right, and it gets into the meat of getting to the city, excuse me, away from the prison idea, get into the town, we get another fight right off the bat. It's a good fight. And then it just sets the tone for a ton of great fights for the rest of the movie. Cung Le always delivers, man. He's known for that side kick and that turning back kick and his takedowns. And he makes sure to bring a ton of those here. Now, the movie itself, I thoroughly enjoy. I love the movie. I love the fights. It's not breaking down barriers of something new and inventive, but that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to just deliver a good old-fashioned martial arts action flick, and it does it. It's directed by John Hyams, who also did, I believe, Universal Soldier: The Reckoning and Regeneration, I believe. So he's worked with Van Damme a couple of other times. He's done a ton of other action movies and stuff. We got Peter Weller, RoboCop himself, shows up in here. What is the other guy's name? I didn't realize until watching this again, revisiting it, because I always revisit these movies before we talk about them, because I want it to be fresh. Like, I've seen everyone we ever talked about, I've already seen, right? That's how we can review it. And most of them I'd seen a long time ago. Like, I've seen every movie that I own. But with these, sometimes I hadn't seen them. Like this one, I hadn't watched, in a few years. It came out in 2012, and it's been a couple of years since I watched it. So I revisit it. But I forgot Jason Mitchell is also in this movie. If you don't know who Jason Mitchell is, he got probably bigger fame, if you will, as playing Eazy-E in Straight Outta Compton, and now he's been showing up in a lot of other stuff. And he's not just a throwaway cameo. He's in a few scenes here. I was like, hey, I didn't realize doing that. So that's always cool to discover when you revisit a movie and see somebody that you didn't know who they were at the time, and now know that there's somebody bigger. It's always kind of cool to see. But this movie's more about the Cung Le factor. This movie's about the fights, and Cung Le delivers them. I love that he plays to his strengths. His that turning back kick is in there a lot. The jumping side kick into the turning back kick, which is one that I'm a fan of. And I think I learned a lot of them from him. On the training side for myself, I've talked on numerous occasions about Van Damme and my obsession with when Bloodsport came out and doing the splits on the chairs and the jumping spinning hook kicks and the fancy kicks, and really focusing that had an impact as I was coming up. But as a continuing martial artist, somebody who I still teach, I still train, I'm still trying to grow and learn and be better. Cung Le was one of these guys that, being a fighter first, added to the element, very much like Don the Dragon Wilson. He was already an established martial artist before he broke in, where a lot of the other guys are, but we didn't know about them. Like Van Damme, nobody knew who Van Damme was really until Bloodsport came out. That doesn't mean he wasn't a martial artist before that. He just wasn't known for that. Cung Le was already famous for being an MMA fighter and a kickboxer. And so by the time he breaks out in there, he had already established that following. And he puts out a lot of videos, even still now, that were like just himself training. Some of them will be talking about certain things, but he used to have a couple of videos that he put out about putting that power into the side kick and his turning back kick and setting him up with fakes and things like this. And I watched those like religiously, just to better, like, these are techniques I already knew how to do and I already used them. And I'd already had a really hard back kick and a really hard side kick and Superman punches and stuff, and knew how to do fakes and leadoffs. But watching him gave me a different perspective, which in turn I think helped make me better. One of the things I always hate is when you meet these martial artists who think they've already learned it all. Like, I know that, so let's learn something different. But you can always improve on what you already know. Even if you do it awesome, excellent, and perfect, you can be better. And Cung Le is one of those guys, to me, that while he wasn't around in the limelight, if you will, when I was coming up in martial arts, for me to be able to see him then, he did, once he kind of got big and I discovered him for myself. I didn't discover him, but discovered him for myself. He did start having an impact of ways of doing certain things and getting that power and the speed and some of the way he moved and executes and showing me the usefulness of something that somebody else may have told me wasn't as effective sometimes, or I started second guessing something because I started looking at the practicality of real life execution, and watching things about, hey, these techniques are great for point fighting, but maybe not as for real life. And I always felt opposite of that. And then when seeing him execute certain things, it makes me realize, okay, you can use some of these things that people like to say is not a good idea if you understand the concepts of how you turn and you move and your fakes and your setups and your power more so in different ways. And so it took what I already knew, built on it with the stuff that I learned from watching him, and in turn, I believe made me a better kicker, better fighter, better understander, and a better instructor. So it gave me more options to explain to somebody, hey, this is how you do a turning back kick. Now here's how you put more speed in it. Here's how you put more power into it. Here's how you fake to set it up. Here's how you may throw it, and if it gets defended, you follow up with something else. Or here's how you throw this. They block it and you go into this. So there's a lot of elements that Cung Lee impact that he had on me, and still does. I still watch his stuff right now. Van Damme was like that with his kicking. I still watch a lot of the Van Damme stuff when he posts online and showing kicks and explaining stuff. So having them two in a movie together, although there wasn't enough Van Damme that I wanted, I was pleasantly surprised on it being a Cung Lee movie. I was kind of on the fences. You know, the thing says Van Damme here first because he's the bigger star at the time this came out. You get them both. But you get Van Damme kicking, you get him doing a little bit of fighting, but it's mostly Cung Lee, and is not a disappointment. I really enjoyed this flick. I'm hoping it's making me want to dive back into some other Cung Lee flicks that I'm going to probably dive into sooner than later. But if you've never checked it out, Dragon Eyes, it's available. Warner Brothers put it out on DVD. I don't know if it's on Blu-ray. I believe it was part of the After Dark series of films they put out back at that time period, and there was a series, like there was After Dark films, and they also had like an action set that they put out. I don't remember all the movies they put out, but I know there was one Gringo, which I believe it was Scott Adkins and Christian Slater, that I looked everywhere for, and I finally got it. So I might be talking about that on here. I can tell my dog's about to bark about something. Go, figure it out. Sorry. So anyway, so I'm gonna wrap it up since he's starting to bark like crazy. Hold on, let's bump that door. So, all right, sorry about that. But we're gonna wrap it up because he's going crazy about something. He's quarantined like the rest of us, so he gets all crazed. So, Dragon Eyes, 2012, Cung Lee, Jean-Claude Van Damme, great karate flick, tons of action. You will not be disappointed if you like these kind of movies. If you're looking for some kind of highbrow, Oscar-worthy movie, then this isn't it. But that's not what this show is about. This show is about awesome fights, fun flicks, and learning from it. Okay, if you're a martial artist, watch movies like this. Pay attention to what's going on. Don't just watch the fights and go. Pay attention to their movements. Pay attention to how they're moving and what they're doing and how they stand and how they twist. And I'm telling you, you can learn a lot by watching these professional, really badass, talented actors and MMA fighters and martial artists. Alrighty? That's it, Dragon Eyes, 2012. That's it for today. I know it was kind of a quick show. I try to keep them short and sweet. Join us tomorrow for another episode of TV Tuesday, where the missus will be here with me, and we've got all kinds of stuff to talk about. And then back here on Sunday for all new episode of Hollywood Matrimony Live. I have no idea what we're talking about that day. And then, of course, circle back to an all new episode of Martial Arts Movie Mondays, where hopefully I can get the missus in because it's going to be time. We may be revisiting Ip Man if we can, because Ip Man 4 will be out. And speaking of Ip Man 4, we're giving away copies of Ip Man 4, the finale on Blu-ray. So don't forget, go to our website at hollywoodmatrimony.com. Look up the contest page. You have to find where you can enter and win you a copy of Ip Man 4. I have these in hand to mail out, so you don't have to worry about the pandemic stopping them from being shipped, because I will ship it personally. All righty. I appreciate you all. Hopefully everybody's staying safe. Stay in. We're going to get through this together. But the most important thing is always remember to keep your hands up. I love you all. Dragon Eyes, 2012, Cung Lee, Van Damme. Find it. Watch it. You got time. I'll see everybody next time. Peace.